Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet right here on Metal Messiah Radio. Tonight we have a special guest with us back on the show, this time to talk about his new album with Arch Matheos. Welcome back to the show, John Arch.
Thank you. Thank you, Jet. I feel very special being with you tonight. Thanks.
So of course, John, original singer for A Fate's Warning, Jim still in Fate's Warning, formed Arch Matheos, and you guys went on to release an album, Sympathetic Resonance, in 2011. So after releasing that album, did you guys plan on releasing more albums? I mean, we're glad you did, but what were your thoughts on where this collaboration would go after releasing that first album?
Well, probably like in true fashion, when I finish something, I kind of walk away and I just like pick up my life as it was. And we did some things. We did the writing for the album took quite a bit of time, and then of course the demos and then the recording, and then when we finished the album, it seemed like everybody was happy with it, mostly everyone. And, so we planned, those couple of live shows so we could give our local fans a little bit of, performance mode of that album. And we really didn't plan ahead. It's kind of the unspoken word where, it was, to us, to me anyways, a kind of monumental amount of work to actually come back after these long hiatuses, a period of time, and get back into the creative process and actually get my voice back into some form of a respectable shape, I guess. So there was no definitive plans, and I guess to follow that up after Sympathetic and after those shows, then came along the phone rang, and it was about doing an anniversary show or two for Awakening Guardian. And of course, immediately when my phone rings and I hear that it's Jim, my gut just goes to the bottom. It's like, oh, what's he want now? So anyways, so the conversation went, well, it's 30 years, Awakening Guardian, and everybody else is on board. So I kind of felt the pressure immediately, but something, it's like I kind of knew right off the bat that it's something that I'm not trying to make it sound like it was a chore, but it's a lot of work getting vocally prepared for a live show, not singing. So the conversation kind of went quickly, and I just said, yeah, I kind of realized that, we kind of owe it to the fans, especially, that album was very popular, and being 30 years, that, it might be a special thing to do. So, so then those shows came, and of course he called me back 2 days later. He said, oh, by the way, we're filming it live for a DVD. And I'm like, what? So anyways, I said, yeah, that's how we operate. So, and so then we did that. And I think that, I guess where I'm going with that is that getting my feet back into it a little bit, get my feet wet in the music and having those performances, it made me think a little bit. And Jim usually approaches me when it comes to doing something, but this time I actually approached Jim and I said, "What do you think, dude? You a lot of people are asking for a follow up to Sympathetic Resonance. You think you might be up for that at some point?" And he immediately was all in. And then of course doing back to back albums with Fate's Warning, I think it's kind of creatively fresh for him to work with me. A different entity to help, a creative outlet, and it's the same for me. So I think I took the long way home on your question, but and so then we kind of just dove into it when he was ready, and he started, his creative process where he writes his musical. He gets into his own head and writes his own, the musical compositions from wherever it comes from. And when he was ready, he started, sending me files, and that's where it all began.
And here we are today to talk about your new album, off of Metal Blade Records. Kind of a frosty, dark cover to the album. Does the cover set the mood for this album?
I think it does. Again, well, because of the mood of the music, and I think there's a couple, standalone songs that maybe don't fit in. It's not a concept album, for sure. Every single one of the songs are totally different. This is my opinion, than another. Mm-hmm. But when I listen to the whole album, still to this day, from point A to point B, somehow it feels like it's connected. I don't know what the continuity is between it, but it's not a concept. But it seems like everything, maybe the way the songs are put in order, the way it flows. But as far as the album cover, we found an artist through our searches, and this guy, his name is Chris Friel, and he has amassed an amazing amount of work with his art, and it made it easier, I would say, because we wanted to have like the inner CD. Every song, we wanted to have an image for every song. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that was 2 images for every song because there's so many damn lyrics in there, so many pages. And so I think it made it easier because he has such a vast amount of photography and artwork to choose from. So we called him, and he was really cool. He's really well known in Europe, very, very popular. So we were kind of lucky. And at the beginning, he says, "You know what?" He says, "Just give me credit, and on the album, and that's it." And we're like, "Holy crap! How many? Who does that?" These days, we're all starving artists, starving artists, and but we couldn't do that, so we ended up paying him anyways. But so I'm babbling on, anyways. But I think the mood of the music and picking the album title, I think the album title actually fit everything. I think it fit the actual mood of most of the music, and it fit the artwork. And that album title was like an act of Congress to finally, come up with something. I came up with, I used the word ethereal a couple times in the lyrics, and Jim said, "Well, you also use the word winter, how about winter ethereal?" Because you wanted to use 2 words. I said, "That sounds great. I mean, it really rolls off the tongue." And winter, having more of the emotional connotations to it, we all know what winter is, right? Where we're from. But I'm thinking that it's more of like, kind of the withering to rebirth, when spring comes, and, desolation and solitude, all those emotional kind of responses to winter. I think a lot of the lyrics, I don't know, wherever it comes from, it kind of covers that kind of territory. So I think it all melded together, and I was very happy with the album cover, because you just look at it and it kind of just makes you wonder, and I think that's what it's all about, kind of a provocative picture that, what does this mean? What is it about? A standalone kind of structure like that, and kind of spooky, and then Brian Ames at Metal Blade put that kind of icy looking frosting over the top of it. I thought that was pretty cool.
I did too. It looked like something we would see out of our windows in the winter, John. And looking at that art, I felt the doom of winter. You know what I mean? It's like, that makes me feel like winter, because I don't mind winter, but it's not my favorite season.
I hear you.
So I almost got a little depressed looking at that cover.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. I know. It's like dread because it lasts so long. Yeah. It seems like we get summer. It seems like we get summer for 5 days, and then we're back to winter again. It so sucks. I don't know why I live here, but whatever.
It does.
Yeah. So good. I'm glad that it had that, the artist, himself was portraying just really, his inner workings. And then I think it was the artwork really kind of nailed what we were, what the songs are about, and that kind of mood. Yeah.
It did, absolutely. Now, you said you don't know where the hell those lyrics came from, but where did the lyrics come from for this album, John? What were you thinking?
Okay, I never know what I'm thinking. Neither does anybody else. It's if I try to take the whole scope of everything and think of what do the lyrics mean, it's overwhelming to me, because I can't. The way I have to do it is I have to take each individual song, and it's kind of the writing process, the way it works, and the way it's always worked between Jim and I. Like I said earlier, he gets into his head or wherever he goes to summon up his, the creative process in his, writing the compositions, of course, without lyrics and without melodies, vocal melodies, he then sends them to me, and I'll put the headphones on, and I will listen until I'm absolutely sick. But I have to, and I'll be 4:00 in the morning. I got 2 hours before I get up from work, but I still have the headphones on, listening to this composition. And what I do is I just close my eyes, and I kind of I'm half between REM and an awake state, and I'm really relaxed, and I let the music kind of just move me. And sooner or later, either through humming or melody lines, or maybe it just strikes me. Whatever the mood of the music is, it'll strike me maybe lyrically first, a lyrical idea, or maybe even a song title. So sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to what comes first, but the lyrics. Just like the melodies have to fit, I like syncopating with the melodies, and I like writing over the bass root of the song a little playfully. And the lyrics, once I latch on to something like an idea. So I guess I have to give you an example. So let's take Kindred Spirits. So it's the last song on the album, 13-minute long. Okay, so I get hit with this, and I'm like, holy shit! I'm already working on 5 songs at different stages, and then I get hit with a 13-minute song. I'm like, I'm doomed. It's like, where do I start with this? But the funny thing is that song hit me right away, and it was the bridge part where I'm singing animals. They are more than that to me. I came up with the syncopated melody, and I guess, we all have subliminal influences, I guess. And, through social media and television and real life experiences, I guess I've seen, we all have seen a lot of things with animals, and the special relationship that we have with our animals, and how we love them, and how they somehow they crawl into us and interweave themselves into our being. It's really amazing. And I thought that it would be a really powerful subject, because it's so meaningful to, unless you don't like animals, and I can't imagine what kind of person just doesn't like animals, and, I started thinking, well, maybe this is a little bit cliche, or maybe this is something that I shouldn't sing about. But, the more I started one sentence at a time, and it's a building process, both lyrically and with the melodies. And before you know it, I'm almost up to the chorus. I had so much to say. And, I just imagined it's kind of based on reality, because I've always had, German Shepherds growing up, and it's based on reality. And it's I am building a picture of a lot of things: abuse, rescue, the relationship between our beloved pets, and that's how that song came. And so I latch onto an idea lyrically, and I just one sentence at a time. I start, as soon as I know that it's starting to blossom, then I know that can continue on with this because it's working. So even though I had doubts about that song, it ended up being, I think my favorite song. Yeah. Lyrically and, melodically, and in every sense, I think it just makes a perfect circle, and it says exactly what I wanted to say.
And it goes right along with the whole mood of this album, too. And then there's a song that, so many people... I mean, of course, we all say that, you have interpreted the lyrics to what you think. But, of course, everybody will interpret them to fit into their own situations. But I think we could all relate to a song like that, especially if we have pets, or if we're relating it to something else, and I think that's what makes these albums kind of special. And like I said, it really fits in with the mood of this album. Like you were saying earlier, that there's just something about this album, even though it's not a concept album, it all kinds of flows together, and you feel that same mood throughout the whole thing,
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that because I mean, I'm hoping that that's what the fans will pick up on, and I think that's the beauty of it. Ever since I even got into music is starting from the earlier albums. It's when when the writers and the fans can actually connect on something, and of course sometimes when you have something to say, I mean, there's no better way to say it than with music and with the words combined, because it's an emotional roller coaster following the music, but it's so multi-layered, having, playful lyrics and also having that. So I don't know. I just think that it's a great thing. And it's always good where, of course, I'm always using metaphorical, examples, and I'm using characters, and sometimes it's about me and sometimes maybe not so much, but it does leave things open for interpretation,
right,
like you said. So, which is great because, again, people in their own lives, we all have our tragic stories, and we all have our pain, and nobody gets out of this life, unscathed and unscarred. It's just not going to happen. So, leaving it open to interpretation, you're right. They are going to mirror their internal workings. And when they do relate to it, they're so appreciative that other people feel that way, and they're not the only ones.
Mm-hmm. And John, with such a wide span of time between the two albums, how long ago were some of these songs written?
I know that these songs were like, we went to the studio just like staring at each other like, okay, hearing the clock tick, crickets, it's like, so where do we start from here? So we went to this like with a blank slate, and I can only say that there were a few ideas that I had. As soon as Jim and I had committed to making the record, I immediately got to work like, with a pad and paper. I'm like, okay, what are some things, just kind of like letting my mind wander and to see if I could come up with something. And I actually, saw some photographs of, here's for an example, like some photographs of Chernobyl. And that was the impetus of what started Pitch Black Prism. I saw the abandoned dolls, and I do realize that some of them are put there as props and stuff to glorify or whatever. Yeah, for tourists that go there. But there's so many unknown truths. I did a lot of actual research on this before I started writing about it, and I came across some fascinating things that are included in the song, so that was like a Chernobyl doll actually was a preconceived song title. But then the more I got into it and the more of these stories that I saw online, the storyline just got bigger and bigger, and I had a wealth of information to work with, and it takes a lot of twists and turns. And if anybody wants to know what it's really about, they can, I guess I can. My resources were number one was a documentary called The Russian Woodpecker. That a lot of people really aren't familiar with it, but that is a magnificent. It's a conspiracy theory, but I'm telling you what, it's up to you to decide whether you want to believe it or not. But there are some really fascinating, shocking things that are said and that are documented. And then I also had the song half written, and I actually had a female character that was part of the storyline, but was kind of a manifestation of a doll, but a live doll. That witnessed the disaster and lived in the area. And then when I saw there was a post, and it was by a gentleman named Yuri. That's Yuri. And this gentleman tells a fascinating. He's a survivor, actually. He's a survivor of the disaster, and he tells of a fascinating story. I don't know if you want me to go into it a little bit, but I'll keep. Okay, and he is a musician. And employed kind of by the Russian government. And, when the disaster happened, immediately, of course, everything was hush-hush all over the world. Nobody knew what was going on, but we were seeing some crazy thing on our satellite imagery. And his story, it starts with he gets a phone call, and before you know it, he's on a bus with I think 2 or 3 of his bandmates. You know, it's kind of like a small orchestra kind of thing. You know, it's a string quartet, and there's a ballerina that also works with them, and they sent these folks right into the heart of the radiation to a medium-sized hall where everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people had gathered there to entertain these people. So I say entertain the dying because they were dying. And so he describes very just the way his words are, which you can read it online. Just go to Google and put in Yuri and Chernobyl. I bet you it'll come up. And so his story goes where they started their performance, and the generator was running because there was no electricity, obviously. And they started the performance, and they knew, the band knew what was going on, and the people knew what was going on, and they knew that they weren't going to survive. So the band started playing their best performance of their lives, as he describes it, and the ballerina is dancing her best performance. And as they were performing, the generator quit, and as that happened, simultaneously, children were coming in from the fields. They had gathered flowers for the beautiful ballerina that was dancing. And as they were walking into this darkness, the children were glowing in the dark. The flowers had already wilted. They had already lost their hair and their teeth. And as the ballerina was spinning, her hair was actually gently, angelically just floating to the floor. So the performance was the performance of a lifetime. And they finished their performance, and immediately Yuri, this gentleman, everyone went to their quarters to stay for the night, which was going to be their last night. And he stuck out the window and was confronted by a Russian with a carbine pointed at him. And they both looked at each other, and these are his words, and they both knew. And he lowered his rifle, and this Yuri gentleman stole a car, got into it, and drove, and he managed to avoid all the checkpoints. And by the time he got to his destination, was like 4 hours away. He was completely blind, and he couldn't drive the car anymore. But he lived to tell the story. So it's a fascinating story. It's actually tragically beautiful, and I try to put it in words. But there's a lot of, simultaneous, there's a lot of things going on there. But knowing what I said, I think when you read through the lyrics, you might be able to, see what I'm trying to say there now, connecting with that storyline.
Now we will. That's sad.
It's very sad. It's very sad. And the more I researched it, I crossed so many sites. Oh my God. And they talk about the death toll being in the thousands. Oh no. If you add many more zeros, you're going to have to add to that. And the more research you do, the more you're going to find out. And they put food, the Russian government put food, cattle and sheep on trains, trying to sell it to different countries that was contaminated with radiation. They sent the sheep to these, these woolen mills in other countries, and so the workers were actually shaving the sheep or whatever, and they all were exposed to radiation, and a lot of them died from exposure to the radiation. So there's just so it's such a huge story. But I want this song to be actually kind of a theatrical, beautiful,
like a tribute, yeah.
It is a tribute, and it's actually to build awareness. And when I heard that Russia is now putting nuclear reactors on ships around the world, I'm saying this is not a good thing. It's not a good idea, So it's that kind of something that we should all be aware about.
Okay, now after after your last album, basically Fates Warning members, but this time around you did something a little bit different. So tell us about the lineup on this album and the contributing musicians on this album and why you chose them, John.
Well, when it comes to a lot of the incidental things, Jim loves to do them. And I don't mean incidental, don't get me wrong, you know what I'm saying? As far as, it was Jim's idea as far as using or having different, boy, I'm screwing up here, having different musicians play on the album because, with Sympathetic Resonance, I'd say there was probably a little bit of confusion, and whereas, a lot of comments were made via social media that, like, well, basically this is Fates Warning, without Ray, with John. And, of course, that was never any intention of ours. This is solely, Jim and I working together. So we thought that it would be a better idea to have contributing musicians on this album to kind of avoid that confusion. So Jim brought that idea up. I thought it was a good idea, although I was disappointed because I really love Bobby and I love Joey Vera, and I'm like, oh, come on, man, how can we do an album without having them? And they're such great musicians. So I was a little disappointed, but as it works out, Jim has worked with a lot of different musicians, and he started bringing up some names, which of course some I recognize and some not so much. But then when we were getting the demos back of the musicians, who of course they were writing their own parts of the music too, that was kind of a criteria for Jim to have musicians that were used to writing their own parts, and so they had the artistic freedom to write their own parts, whereas Jim is not dictating, hey, play this on the drums, play this, or don't, following the demos. We didn't want that. So, and then, Metal Blade was on board with it. They thought it was a great idea. And it turned out where Bobby and Joey both heard that there were going to be contributing artists on the album, and they said, well, if it's going to be like that, then hey, I'll play one or two. And so that, it was a beautiful thing. It's like, cool. All right, so now we have even a larger array of musicians on the album. So, it was kind of going into the unknown a little bit, but after we started hearing the demos, it's like, oh wow, yeah, this is really cool. And I think probably the biggest challenge was not for Jim and I, but for Jens and Tony at Fascination Tree Studios doing the mixing, because you have all these different drummers, all these different bass players. Everybody's got their own different style. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm sure it could turn into a train wreck very easily. Sounding like a falling china cabinet. But luckily it didn't. Everybody's really competent in their musicianship, and their writing was great. And I think Jens and Tony did just a masterful job. No pun intending, at mastering and mixing everybody. So there's a continuity to it. There were some challenges because for example, Sean Malone uses a fairly clean, bass sound, and Joe DeBias also. And then Steve DiGiorgio, if I can say that right, it's Italiano, but he has a sort of he plays a fretless, and it's a little bit distorted, so he's got a different sound. So whatever, I mean, that was a challenge for the mixing, and I think they did a great job. So so the musicians here, let me see, the Monster 6'6", Steve DiGiorgio, he plays on Vermilion Moon's Wrath and Straight and Narrow on bass, and I'll just say I think every musician killed it on this album, did a great job. Sean Malone, Cynic, I believe, and Gordian Knot, just a phenomenal bass player. Pitch Black Prism and Kindred Spirits, just killed it. I love it. Our old pal Joe DeBias on Solitary Man, I was so happy that he was able to make an appearance, and a lot of the fans too they were really pleased that this is really cool for that to happen. And of course, Joey Vera on Wanderlust and Never in Your Hands. So drums, and you can tell I'm reading this off a piece of paper, can't you? Yeah. And so Thomas Lane, I think more noted for studio musician, but I'm not really familiar with a lot of things that he's played on, but just such a competent drummer. Did a great job on Vermilion, Solitary Man, and Pitch Black Prism. And of course, the one and only Bobby Jarzalback on Wrath and Straight and Narrow. And a lot of people were happy again to see Mark Zonder make an appearance on Wanderlust and Tethered. And again, awesome job. Matt Lynch, Cynic, I believe, again. And Kindred Spirits, I thought he killed it. Just great job. Bard Kolstad on Never in Your Hands from Leprous.
Yeah, I love that dude.
Yeah, he has such a unique style. And the weird thing about it, it's like everybody had their, I don't know how they were assigned each song. I guess maybe Jim, that was his concept. But it seems like whoever played on whatever song they played, it just seemed like they were fit for it. It just turned out that way. And Bart has just a very unique style, and it really fits in every hand. Did a great job. And Frank Oresti playing some shredding leads, alongside of Jim's more melodic leads, so it gives a nice contrast. And glad to have Frank, and great. And I mentioned Jens and Tony from Fascination Street Studios doing the mixing. So all in all, really great team of musicians. And I've been meaning to send out emails to everybody to personally thank them, and I am going to get to that. So yeah,
and it's a great album. And it kind of makes it kind of fun with all these different musicians on there. And it's like I think you had mentioned earlier, these songs definitely aren't all exactly the same, and I think it's because you have these different musicians and a little different styles and elements going in there. It just makes it a really fun album to listen to, meaning you don't lose interest in it. Sometimes you get a new album, you hear a couple of songs, okay, I'll pick the rest of it up later. But this one, it's nice to just hear the whole thing, because you want to hear what the next one's going to sound like, especially knowing what all these musicians that are on there. So I think it was kind of cool. And now you did a video that was released a few months ago from Straight and Narrow. So tell us about why you chose that song for the video and what it's all about. And were you freezing your ass off? Because my gosh, that released in March, so when the hell did you make that?
Oh, listen to this. So I'm trying to think of what question was first. Did I freeze my ass off was the last question. Yes, I froze my ass off. The first day, I was on that bike for 8 hours, and it was 33 degrees. And then, and then the second day was another 8 hours, and we reached a high of 27.
Oh my God.
So it's like 60 miles an hour. I think I figured it out. It was 5-degree wind chill factor on my face. And the thing of it is, I'm not wearing a helmet. Pretty much just wearing this leather skull cap thing that actually just felt like it made it even colder. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, the story behind that, and the Metal Blade actually had the idea to do Wanderlust as the first video. And I thought it was cool. Because there's a cool storyline in Wanderlust, and I think we would have worked out a really cool narrative for that for a video. But I don't know. Jim and I got talking, and I asked him. I said, I don't know. I think the Straight and Narrow strikes me as a cool kind of first video, because it's kind of balls to the wall, and it's in your face, and it's I just think it would kind of maybe excite people. I don't know, and I just think concept wise we might be able to come up with something for that one. So I think what happened was that Fates Warning was on tour, and the reason the Straight and Narrow kind of came to fruition is that they were on tour, which means that Bobby Jarzabek and Jim were already together. And that means Steve DiGiorgio. I'm screwing that all up, sorry. I'm trying to sound all Italian and stuff's not working out. So, yeah, Steve, I'm just going to go by Steve. Steve and myself, so they flew Steve in, and I drove down to Pennsylvania. And they were performing at the Sellersville Theater that night, which was great. Which meant that we had a venue to kind of do the live portion of the video. David Brodsky and his girl Allie, they're tremendous people, and they're really great. I think they're great at what they do. So they did that at the Sellersville Theater as far as the live section. So that worked out good. And then the next week, it was, I don't know, fly by the seat of your pants kind of thing of weird story behind this. So we have the Straight and Narrow. I have a basic idea, and Dave and I were talking concept. He's picking my brain what. And so this song is it's almost kind of semi-autobiographical. I can't believe I got that word out of myself. And it's more about I'm thinking back about my younger days, and when I came up with the phrase, I could never fly the Straight and Narrow, I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's got to be part of the chorus. So I actually had the song title first, and then I started writing the lyric the lyrical baseline, or ideas. So I said, hey, Jim, can you write me or write a song? It doesn't have to be long. Maybe even would be better if it was a shorter one by our standards, instead of 13 minutes, maybe, 5 minutes or so. And, high energy, because I have something to say that I think it'll fit if it's high energy. And he goes, sure. And that's what he came up with, that music. And of course, he came up with some twists and turns that, added to the actual lyrical and melodical melodies. So anyways, the weekend after the Sellersville Theater, I had a trailer hooked up to my truck with my Harley loaded on it, and I'm like, oh shit, it's freezing out here, and we're going to be shooting me on the back of a motorcycle. So we had a very loose narrative. I'm down in my basement at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we should have left at like 8 in the morning. And I'm making crosses, roadside crosses, out of fucking plywood, and I'm painting it up, and I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. So, but it was kind of a loose narrative. So I had the bike on, I had these crosses in the back of my truck, and then Jeannie's, riding shotgun because we couldn't find anybody to do the female narrative part of it, which is she's the Mirage. The Mirage coming off the road. She's dangerous, I'm told. She'll catch your eye, and it's a long way down. Kind of almost a temptress kind of thing. Like I said, a loose narrative. So that's what we did. We got there, and it was like probably 2 14-hour days. And we worked really hard. And, David, great. He got a drone. He's following me around with this drone. They got GoPros mounted all over the bike. And, so it's like we just worked really hard. There was no goofing around. We just put our nose to the grindstone. And then in 2 days, that video was done. And so kind of as we went along, we started writing the narrative. And so you know what? It's kind of open interpretation. A lot of people are like, calling me, oh my God, Jeannie's dead. What happened? It's like, no, she's fine. She's fine. It's like she's just playing a part, and it's a picture on a cross. I know. Yeah. It kind of freaked us out too. Looking
it freaked me out too. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. She was kind of looking. Do we have to do this? Like, yeah, it's part of the narrative. It's like, don't worry about it. Everything's gonna be fine. So that's how that video came together, and I just think it's a testament to Dave and Allie, how they when they just know how to get certain shots, and they know what they're looking for. And, so that was good. And, while we're at it, we, just FYI, we just shot another video, for Tethered. So this one is going to be a little bit more involved. They came up here for one day, and we had a perfect day to shoot. And we got I'll use the word ethereal again, some ethereal footage of fire and sky and sunset and stars and stuff. Yeah, so it's really cool. And then we drove down to New Jersey, and we did some more narrative in this old industrial park with gargoyles and shit. It was pretty cool. And they are actually going to use, a couple actors and actresses in the narrative for this one. So I was off the hook, which is great. I hate getting in front of cameras. So that's actually gonna the video for Tether will be out the release day, May 10th. So that's something to look forward to. I hope. I haven't seen any of the footage to approve it, but the good thing about doing 10,000 takes like he likes to do, it gets so it does get repetitive, but you have to be really creative when you're trying to be in front of the camera and make it realistic. So the good thing is, like, if you don't like something shot of yourself, there's so much to choose from. So hopefully it'll all come together. So.
Well, we're looking forward to that one. And John, what were your personal feelings on making this album and hearing it after it was all said and done?
Well, I think my type A personality, and I have this bad habit of what's the word I'm trying to use? Being self-critical. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I was going to bash myself even more, but self-critical is okay, because I think we all have a little bit of that. So yeah, I have to say that there were a lot of stressful times during this recording. And we don't always, we have a great relationship, Jim and I. We don't always agree on everything. There was a couple times that we really locked horns, but in the end, we all, I think we compromise, and we cool off. We go to our separate rooms, and then and then things end up being better than either one of us wanted, because we came to a compromise with something different, which was better. So, having said that, there was a lot of challenges along the way, and even coming up with the title, and the final mixes. Oh my God. It was like we're getting all these mixes back. And I think that might be almost the worst of it, because you start hearing stuff that's not there. You're so engrossed in it, and you're listening over and over and over again. You're hearing shit. And you think it's absolutely, you can drive yourself insane.
Mm-hmm.
So we were actually at this mix, and it was mix 3D, and I think Jim and I actually said, "Okay, this is the one." I think, I think this is a good mix, because I hope you don't mind me continuing talking about this off-the cuff stuff, but my voice and Jim's guitar happened to be in very close frequencies. So during the mix, I have a certain attenuation to my voice that some people don't like. It's, I totally get that. No big deal. But we were trying to, during the mix, sometimes the equalization, you're a musician, so sometimes a certain EQ mix may accentuate or bring forward something you don't like, like a muddy guitar sound, or something, a little cutting edge on my voice that I want to, get rid of. So we had this really good mix, and then Jens came back from vacation and said, "Well, I'm going to mess around with it a little bit more." And I'm like, "Oh shit!" So he started, doing his thing, and he was cool because he was using some analog stuff, and he was really mixing it up, and they worked really, really hard. So we were getting mixes back again. So we had 3B that we liked, but so now we're at 4, A, B, C, 5, 6, 8. I'm like, oh my God, I was losing my mind. But it seemed like the farther we were moving forward, the more muddy things were getting, or it just wasn't as good as 3B. So I think I was sticking to my guns. I'm like, dudes, I think 3P is still the best, and I think we're losing it, And it ended up 10 minutes later, I got this email like, "Yep, you're right. We're keeping 3P," because everybody, including these guys that do it for a living, we're all losing our marbles because you're listening to something so much that you're starting to see things, hear things. So, so that was part of the stressful part about it. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that there was so much shit going on till even the very end, and then the video started and the interviews, and you're never at the point where you can really relax and actually kind of take it in. But I think I finally got to that point. After we just finished this last video, I was able to put the headphones on and try to clear my mind and listen to everything. And, I was still happy with it. So, I mean, I think that is a good thing. Of course, all musicians do this, that, once things are done, now all of a sudden you're getting all these great ideas after the album's out, but now you're getting these epiphanies. Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. Oh, I hear this beautiful part now, but it's freaking late. So you got to let it go. So I've come to the point where the things that I don't like are far outweighed by what I do like. So what I've let all that shit go, and I'm happy with it, and I think I've come away with a sense of accomplishment. And really happy at my age that I was able to, get to the place where I could do a halfway decent job vocally, and that Jim and I, our creative chemistry, if you want to say, was still there. And so instead of an utter failure, here we are, I think pretty much at the other end of the spectrum, that all the things that I've heard so far from media and from people that have heard it already have been very positive. There's going to be haters. There's going to be people that never liked us to begin with, and are going to continue to voice their opinion, but that's fine. It goes with the territory. So, again, a long way home to answer your question, but I think I'm happy. I think I'm happy with it. Yeah.
So what formats is it going to be released on, John?
Oh, Metal Blade is fantastic as far as everything under the sun that can play. Pretty much, they're going to be different vinyls and colors, and there's going to be things. I love how they do this. It's like there'll be some things available in Europe that aren't available here, so there's going to be like bad blood between the Brits and us, and
Yay!
whatever. Yeah, I want that marble, the marble color. So yeah, they're doing the LPs, and they're doing of course the CDs and the bundles and T-shirts and everything, and thank God that the fans they're great, and I so appreciate. Even the digital downloads, I mean, those are, they don't do a lot. I mean, as far as trying to pay off your bills and stuff like that.
Right.
It's the digital age here that we're at. But, I'm really grateful to, a lot of the fans that have posted up, and, they're so excited. And I've got, I picked, I've already ordered and everything. So that's really good, because, not so much for me either, but, our Metal Blade family, they put a lot of time and money and effort into everything. They don't have to do that for us. You know what I'm saying? Because, we're not going on the road making, on a worldwide tour for, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, but they're still doing the videos, and they're still putting 100% behind this effort. So I appreciate the fans, and I also appreciate Brian and Tracy and everybody at Metal Blade, and everybody like you involved in the press and getting the word out, spreading the word, and they're just doing a phenomenal job. So I really am. I never use this word blessed. I don't know why, but I'm going to use it tonight. So yeah, so it's a really good feeling. It's a really good feeling.
So there you guys go. Arch Matheos have a new album out off of Metal Blade Records called Winter Ethereal. And we're going to play a few tracks on tonight's show. And John, as always, thank you for coming back on the show to talk about the album and the band, and all the best to you guys. And we'll be in touch.
I can't thank you enough. Thank you very much. Thank you to all your listeners. It's been a pleasure speaking with you always.